Polymaths are people who are good at many things. I find them annoying. For 10 years, I've been annoyed by our next guest, Josh Jensen, principal UX architect for Stone Rooster, and one of the most annoyingly talented people I have ever met. Josh gives us his take on React and Next versus Vue and Nuxt. We also take a retrospective look at some of the not-so-modern challenges digital commerce faced and faces, and whether Composable has solved for them or introduced their own set of challenges. Finally, we talk about the future of passkeys and passwords, and how it affects personalization and payment, and how Josh's path to e-commerce traces back to the control room of a Virginia-class nuclear submarine. I'm Justin Burrows. This is Commerce Chats by High Velocity. Welcome to Commerce Chats from High Velocity. I'm Justin Burrows, Hype Man. Joined with me today is Josh Jensen. What is your title? What do you do?
What is my title? I think I'm the principal UX architect. I think that's the title I was given. I feel like titles can be semi-arbitrary, yeah?
I am a hype man, so yeah.
Well, that fits you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. It kind of it accentuates the emotional element of the job, you know. And I didn't want to be called an evangelist because that just doesn't. It's very 2010. So what are you UXing? What are you user experiencing, user interfacing on? What are you architecting?
Yeah, so I feel like there's two sides to UX, right? Like there's the studying user behaviors and running A/B tests and, doing user testing and interviewing people, all that stuff. I don't do that. I'm a terrible designer. That would be an insult to designers everywhere if I was put into that group. I am on the development side of things. So I've been doing this for a long time, architecting front ends, everything from, taking mock-ups from designers and that side of the UX team and turning it into a usable website, optimizing page load times and ADA best practices, right, for accessibility, and just trying to make a website ultra performant so that users can, in our case, right, for e-commerce, find what they want, put in the cart, and give companies their money as quick as possible.
Yeah.
With as little friction as possible, right?
Now, has that process of the page loading optimization, has that changed significantly over the time that you've been doing it? Like what you would do to make a page load quickly?
Oh, sure. Back in the day, they would have sprites, for instance, right? So like all the little icons on the page would go into a single image, and then you would use CSS to kind of move that image around and show just, I don't know, a calculator icon or something, right? Now we don't do that because with HTTP2, you get multiplexing. So you can download a ton of stuff at once instead, in parallel, instead of everything happening in serial, which was why you downloaded one larger image, used to minify and obfuscate or concatenate everything together, all your CSS and all your JavaScript, and you put it in one big file, download it once, and then it would be cached in the browser and you wouldn't have to worry about that anymore. But now you don't have to do all of that, right? Like you still use some of those same concepts, but you can bundle JavaScript that's only necessary on that page, but you can download a whole bunch of JavaScripts or CSS all in parallel. So you don't have to have, a giant JavaScript anymore that you download once. You can split it up into a bunch of smaller packages that you can download all at once. So it's changed a lot, and there's a lot of great tools out there to help you, get all of that stuff, all the goodness, all the performance goodness right out of the box.
Goodness, yeah, is good, obviously. But I've also been reading it. It seems like I've just kind of gotten into the was it the routing layer? Is that something that you deal with?
Yes, yeah, and so I've over my time, a whole bunch of different things have been used for routing. There's just the inherent built-in behavior where you name a file and then you link to that file, right? There now, if you're using Vue or React, or there's subsequent frameworks, Nuxt or Next, right? Or Angular, there's routers built in where it handles all of that within the framework, and you still have to work to get it working. But if you utilize that, there's a lot of performance enhancements there too, right? So it won't load everything. You'll already have some stuff there. You can. There's other things. There's always new things like prefetching assets that a user might use on the next click, right? So there's all that stuff. But yes, routing. Back you and I, we never touched on this, but you and I go back a long ways. Back on ATG projects. Right now, I'm working on a site core project, which feels very familiar to ATG in that it's trying to be a monolith, right? Like all in one.
Yeah.
So it does all the routing there, but we've worked on projects together with like Content Stack, where it's a little bit more manual. It all depends on how you set things up, right? So there's that whole monolith versus microservices or headless. So the paradigms are changing. You still have to do routing somehow, but you just there's different ways to do it now, and different tools help you optimize all of that and fetch stuff, assets, JavaScripts, images, all that beforehand, or only the ones that you need. So everybody's focused on performance and accessibility and all that good stuff, and making it easier, lowering the point of entry so that people can get all that stuff easier.
Well, you mentioned that, I mean, even monolith or headless, you still have to set the stuff up. And it seems to me like there's a lot more stuff to set up nowadays with like composable architectures. Is that your experience? I mean, do you have to like really be a big brain propeller head to properly set that up?
I mean, they wouldn't give the job to me if you needed to be that big of a brain, right?
What?
No, I mean, I would say, I think it's equally as complicated as it used to be. Before, you needed to have such an expertise in one thing, right? Like the ATG architects that I have worked with are absolutely brilliant, right? They know the ins and outs of that, and how to optimize the whole architecture from like servers and pools and literally everything about ATG, the ins and outs of it, what to tweak, what not to touch, like what to cache, what not to cache, how to do really everything within it. Now, with composable architectures, you need that expertise in making everything talk together, but then in creating a middleware layer so that everything can communicate, and you're getting what you want from it. There's requirements for each individual product, and then like how do you want that to work within your system? What are your business requirements? So you need to have an expertise in like AWS or GCP, as well as like each of those individual products that you would use there, and you need to have an expertise in that product, that composable product that you're trying to integrate into your system. So I think it's more that you need a breadth of knowledge rather than a depth of knowledge in one thing now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Now, I remember you used to refer to a website that was it like is IE11 dead? Do you remember
Hmm.
that?
Yeah, well, it was something that I forgot about because I did die, and it was a happy day. I actually put it on my calendar when I found out the end of life for IE. Yeah, I do remember that. It was like
I
way back in the day. Was
I
that
I
when we
think
were working at Route 21?
I'm not sure, but it was. I remember the day though. It was because, and I also remember the projects like leading up to that. Is that a? I mean, we do cross browser testing, but is that less of an issue now that most of it's kind of Chromium?
Yeah, I do think it's less of an issue. There's still things. I would say that Safari is probably the new IE, just in the fact that it is WebKit based, which is great, but they do, Apple thinks that they're all high and mighty and they do things different than everybody else.
Mhm.
Sometimes not to industry standards. Again, they're WebKit based, so most of it just works fine. But I think that, and especially because in the US, iOS is the most popular, at least for most of the clients that we work with. The
Mhm.
target audience is usually iOS based, and so you have to hit those really hard during testing, and so you find some fairly specific Safari bugs.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, I
mhm.
would say that, between Firefox, Chrome, Edge, and Safari, things are in a much better state than they used to be with IE, especially.
Yeah, that was and I remember like just having an update for one browser would
Oh,
just throw in a whole cascade of regressions.
yeah. You used to
Yeah.
have to, test for browser functionality a lot. I would say we don't do that much anymore. I think my favorite reference site now for if we're allowed to use something is caniuse.com. I love that website. Great site. It's definitely in a better state. You don't have to create an IE specific CSS file anymore with
Yeah.
all those overrides and funny little code snippets that you got to insert everywhere just in case something's IE9. Yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. It's definitely getting better.
So are there any annoyances that have replaced browser cross browser issues? I mean, what's stuck in your craw right now for your job that you
Usually
find
just
annoying?
BAs.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We're like
No.
that. Yep.
What's stuck in my craw right now? I don't know. I think we're heading in a good direction overall. I think there's so many different technology is always evolving fast. I think, but there's so many different platforms and frameworks and tools out there, and it's changing so quickly. It's hard to keep up with everything. If you're dealing with the bleeding edge, I think it's harder than ever to keep up with that. We usually, I would say, we tend to be slightly slower to inheriting or trying to use newer technologies. Just in that, you don't want the bleeding edge, maybe leading edge, but
Mhm.
bleeding edge is tough. You have no idea if that product's going to gain traction or not.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, like what I find interesting is there are a lot of pathways that end up being an island under themselves. Like you go, like all of these frameworks are supposed to be interoperable, but they always have like little gotchas on there where I don't know if you call it vendor lock or whatever, but but like I'm thinking about, so you mentioned like React. And so you have React and Next.js, and then another popular one it's the one with Nuxt,
View.
Vue. So what is there is there a difference? I mean, yes, obviously there's a difference, but do you look at it like as a Chevy Ford type of thing, where yes, there are distinctions, but they're in the same
Well,
milieu?
I would say yes between Vue and React. Vue and React are like libraries. They're JavaScript libraries
Mm-hmm.
that allow people to add reactivity to a website. Whereas Nuxt and Nuxt, so Nuxt is React based and Nuxt is Vue based. They're frameworks that allow you to bootstrap. They lower that point of entry for a whole bunch of stuff. They add a whole bunch of great stuff like routing and caching and data fetching and all of that kind of stuff. They help you create a website more quickly and easily, or a web application. It doesn't have to be a site, but I would say those are the two more popular
Well, I'm saying between,
libraries and frameworks.
but between but in the frameworks, I mean, you see people, it's like Next.js is the thing, and then some people say Nuxt.js. I know that there's other
Yeah,
ones out there. Is
yeah, those
there,
are the two big ones.
are they, but from your perspective, there's a lot of hype and there's a lot of, conferences, then people get up and say, this is the one, this is the one. As a guy who doesn't have a dog in the fight other than
Mhm.
it makes your job easier, do you
Mhm.
do you see that there's a difference? I mean,
There's a
you know what I mean?
difference. Yeah, no, there's, I think, but I would compare the difference between Vue and React. So React, you're using JSX or TSX, and with Vue, you're really just these Vue files they create. They're really just HTML templates with JavaScript and CSS, or Sass, or however you want to do it, and you can use TypeScript in them as well. But I would say that Vue is easier to learn if you're new to the whole, reactive concept and the concept of a virtual DOM and all that. Whereas React, I would say there's a lot more to learn right away to be proficient, even to get to be a beginner. But once you pick it up, you can move around fairly easily. When I was learning, I was doing Vue and Nuxt for a little bit and trying to play around with that while doing my full-time job. And then did the same thing with React, and then ended up, working on a bunch of React stuff, then switching back to Vue. And, I think it's like any programming, it's all syntax. Like once you understand the concepts of what you're trying to utilize a tool for, then you can just switch to a tool that's trying to do the same thing and just learn the syntax, right? Like as long as it's got good documentation, you can figure it out. I would say, if you're trying to learn one of these frameworks, Vue is probably easier to learn. I would say React is probably more popular, a little bit more difficult to learn. But I think it really, you can do the same thing with both of them.
So, why do you hate infinite scrolling so much?
Oh my God. Everybody
I
wanted
did.
infinite scrolling, didn't they?
Is that the same as lazy load?
It depends on how people use them, but I would say infinite scrolling is lazy loading pages.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than using pagination, people would want to lazy load pages of results, right? So as a user scrolls down, they can infinitely scroll, as long as there's enough results all the way down the page, and they'll just keep scrolling. I would say the hardest thing with that was returning to the correct result when a user hit the back button. Anybody that has ever done front end web dev knows that the back button is super annoying, but used very much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I use it myself,
Mm-hmm.
but getting the expected result on that page, if you're at the 1009th item down the page, you need to make sure you get there. Browsers have done a ton with history API and the back button and all of that. So it's gotten infinitely easier. But I think Google even came out and they had done a test where they were doing infinite scrolling. I think they went back to pagination. Did I send you something? I could have sworn I read that.
I wouldn't imagine we generally tend to keep in touch about particular pet peeves we have. So I
Yes.
think that and WYSIWYG editors,
Oh,
rich text editors.
rich text editors. Doesn't everybody want a rich text editor?
Everybody wants a rich text editor.
Just in case you want to be able to put HTML on a page, you need that rich text editor. Even though we warn everybody that they will break the site, it will go down. They'll say, "Oh, I don't know what happened," and then we'll find a rich text editor that has a brand new entry, and it was some broken HTML that ruined the page.
Yeah. Sorry, that blink tag was deprecated. You know, so
no more Christmas lights all over the page.
No, we're going to do a Starfield background with an animated letter going into a box with a link to your email address. So that's funny, that kind of balance between like what the user needs versus what the user wants, and trying to balance that. I mean, one of the things that's fun about working on a product is that when you're working for somebody and you're trying to figure out like what they need, it's a negotiation, a conversation, and they don't always follow recommendations. And that's part of it.
At first.
Yeah. At first. Yeah. You work on them though. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. And you were always much earlier on in requirements with the clients, but you know me, I like to push back on things that we have experience, like lots of years of experience with, that gives companies pain points, right? Or that gives users pain. One of them being infinite scrolling. It's great that, I think that everybody went to infinite scrolling and then they realized it's not all that they thought it was. And then they go back to pagination because it's more consistent. I like the user experience better myself. I don't always fit in with the majority of, A/B tests, but Amazon uses it. I think Amazon, Walmart, Google, they all use pagination. I think they probably have much bigger UX budgets than we do.
Yeah.
I tend to follow what they're doing. I know a big push now is like long scroll checkout. So like single page checkout, actual, like where it's just one big long form. Not even not leaving checkout, but just reloading via Ajax certain pieces of the page. Just literally just going all the way down the page, just one huge long form of, user info, shipping, billing, confirmation. I don't like that either. I like to lead the user to, you don't want the user to have a whole bunch of stuff to do at once, right? Like just assume that the user wants to do as little work as possible and just give you what information, like just keep asking them for little bits of information and then all of a sudden take their money and give them their product. I think it's overwhelming to have, 5 forms on a page that you need to fill out. But I guess we'll see in 3 to 5 years what happens.
If that much.
Go backwards. Yep.
So
I wouldn't be the first time I was wrong, Justin.
What? No. What's going to happen with payments? I think
we'll keep taking them.
Yeah. No, but I get to, I'm like, I go to checkouts now, and now instead of, just entering your credit card, now you've got Bread, you've got, what was it? Klarna? You've got PayPal, you've got Apple Pay, Google Pay. There was even like a Visa passport or something like that.
Oh yeah. There's, Amazon
Pay.
Some sites take Venmo, I think.
Yeah. Like, I feel like now you were probably, you remember the RSS feed era where like everybody had like a feed reader and you would have like all of those chiclets for all of the different feed readers.
Yes.
I feel very 2009. What's going to, I just see these as the same chiclets, but for payment groups. What's going to happen from a UI perspective? I mean, it seems like a god awful mess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the more you have to integrate, because it's a front end and a back end integration, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, especially with companies need to give you access to their portal, like the Google Pay or Apple Pay portal, and there's a lot of setup and testing to make sure it's all working properly, and then it's a lot of interaction with the client to get access to what you need. So that it's definitely a process to get working. But I think again, it's that okay, I have all my information saved there.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm on Android, I got Google Pay. If I'm on Apple or iOS, I have Apple Pay. People just they trust the companies and they have their information saved there, and they just click it once, and it's got their shipping, billing, and payment info in it, and they click it and click it again, and then they have their product. So again, it's like I don't want to fill out 80 forms if I don't have to. I'm just going to click that button and be done with it.
Yeah, that
Now,
makes
like,
sense.
yeah, it's kind of like the social sign in, right? Like, do I want to sign in with Google? Do I want to sign in with Twitter or GitHub or whatever, right? Like, it, I click it, it sends me a one-time password, or makes me use my pass key now.
Yeah.
Right, pass keys are great now, and just again, you're trying to remove friction from whatever process the user is trying to complete.
So as a, and I'm sorry, no offense, but
Mm.
as an Android user, don't you find that frustrating?
Frustrating how? And I'm
Well,
not offended that you called me an Android user, because I am.
as a green texter,
Mhm.
but does that, I mean, you're in two different ecosystems, right? You're on a Mac, at least I assume you were. I
Oh, I would.
inherited your
That's
computer before that was a Mac. Maybe you've gone to PC. I don't know.
Well, I do prefer Mac still. I think they tend to be much faster with the behemoths that we work. All the
Mm-hmm.
VMs and programs that we use tend to be very process intensive. I think they'll run better on a Mac. And I have 12 years of muscle memory with the keyboard and shortcuts and all that. So I remapped all my keys on my Windows machine. But
So you're on a Windows machine.
I am now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
But yeah, no, I mean they all do the same thing. Look at look at how iOS and Android, like, what is the great innovation? Like, what's it been? I don't know. Everything's just kind of boring. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, now on Apple you can move your tiles around. Like, oh great. Like, Android's been able to do that forever, and then Android's trying to figure out Face ID, right? Like, okay, what's new though? No,
Yeah.
nothing. It's all the same. It
Well,
all does the same thing. It's more
but
like you said,
mhm.
the green text box, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, like even Apple has to start. The EU has basically forcing them to inherit or adopt RCS, right?
Yeah.
So there's more. It will be more secure at some point. Right now, we're getting way into the weeds. You got me all started on iOS and Android.
Well, I think it's important. I think
Yeah.
that because that's where all of our interactions with the customers, like well, not all of them, but the majority of our interactions with the customer are on mobile.
Mm-hmm.
And like if you're in a mixed tech household and you've got your Apple passkey stuff here, but you're on your computer, but then your phone is like not Apple. It's like it's like Google saying, it's like, can I suggest a really strong password for you? And it's
Mm-hmm.
great. And then the next time I go to the site, it's like, who the hell are you? And I
Yes.
realize, you know, I'm not gonna. I'm not typing all of that. Looking up on my computer. And it kind of it bites you. But that's like you're saying, like that's one of the barriers to people interacting your site, that they find a way to get access to their saved information. Uh,
Right.
and like there
Yep.
was even somebody was, guys, I think it's the guy from Kelly from Commerce Tools, was talking about how the World Wide Web is going to be over because we're not going to have browsers anymore. It's all going to be like AI fed stuff, you know. And
Straight into
then
our
I guess so. I guess
great.
so. Yeah. But I what I think is interesting about that is being able to identify yourself and to be seen by whatever system you're working with, to do that in a way that's frictionless. And so I find that's really interesting. Like especially like with the passkey stuff, where there are certain sites that I log into and I don't ever have to do a password. You
Yeah,
know,
you
it says
yeah, you use your Face ID or your
yeah,
fingerprint, whatever, wherever you save your passkey. Yeah, I agree. It's great. Not everybody, not every site or app supports passkeys yet, but
yeah,
enough do where I use them all the time. I have had some issues, as you switch, like when I switched to this new computer, I had a passkey saved on the other one, and
yeah,
then I had to update them, but again, you would have had to do the same thing with a password if you forgot your password or anything.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's funny because I think that of all of the technical challenges that I've had to tackle in my career as a BA, like all of the things getting into the nitty gritty and what the settings and configurations need to be, the hardest thing I've ever had to do is manage the access and accounts for my kids on my phone. It is the
Yes.
most complex, counterintuitive thing. And I think that's where, you know, it's hard. It's hard. You know, all of my tech support calls from my family are, you know, about stuff like that. And, you know, I think that making that a simpler, safer process is, you know, would really be great. Because I
I'm
think
writing down
inherently,
this $1 million idea. I'll get back to you. We can
well,
work on this.
all
We'll
right,
bring.
it's worth hundreds of dollars.
I
I think
think
that's $100
tons of
idea.
hundreds of dollars even.
Yeah, because I think that that little gate is like, I if you know that you're starting a completely different interaction with the customer. If you come in as a known person, you know,
Hmm. Yeah.
because I mean, like, imagine you would go into a store and they were like, okay, I'd like to buy this. And they're like, well, first I need you to fill out this entire form before, you know, you get something. It's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I
and
don't
it's,
want
yeah. Uh, um,
Yeah, and also, like, what if you walked into a grocery store and they had basically everything that you usually buy right there? You could grab
mhm,
that and then go get your one-offs, right? So
yeah,
once you're authenticated, it's great because you have a nice personalized experience,
yeah,
which is, when you think about it, that can be a little weird, but I think people have gotten so used to just giving sites their data, their
hmm,
basic information, and moving along, which is good and bad, right?
hmm,
Like, because especially with all the breaches that are out there now, you have
yeah,
no idea, who could potentially have your data. So you have to be careful about what you do put out there. But all these, all these companies, Google, Apple, like they want your data. That's what they want because they personalize experiences and then give ads. I guess not so much Apple, but definitely Google, Facebook,
hmm,
right? Like they're selling ads.
yeah. Well, so yeah, and I think they're like two things get overlooked when people are designing like their web experience. One is everybody's on mobile. Like so many people are on mobile, even for sites that you would think would be really stodgy and that you wouldn't use mobile for. People still will look it up on their phone,
Yeah.
and it's like, you know, that dumb thing that UX architects do, where
Which one?
they design for a 55-inch HD TV screen. You know,
Well,
they're designing.
that's what we code on. So yes.
Yeah, yeah, because that's and then so then you end up with something that looks great for the developer screen, but is somebody's on their phone being like, what is,
Yes.
you know, or like if it's me, then it's like that. Sorry, I was taking my glasses off and pretending to squint at my phone.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was picturing you
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
you were doing.
yeah. But and the other one is that they talk about like everybody loves personalization, and it's like 90% of your browsers are not logged in.
Yeah.
Like 90% of your traffic are there for the first time, and you think you're going to move the needle by like having a special thing pop up, you know. I find that like unless there was something where you can actually, you know, be known, you know, for who you are, or as a user, you know, personalization, I don't know, it doesn't seem especially compelling to me.
Yeah, I think it's also one of those things that kind of like, right, tagging, the reason you do tagging like Telium or Google Analytics
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, they, again, you're trying to get information about the user so that you can optimize interactions with specifically them or the website in general, see how people are using it, right? I think the problem with that is everybody wants it. I've only seen a handful of companies actually use it.
Yeah,
Like even in its most basic form. Like, oh, I want A/B testing, and then we'll come back 3 years later and be like, great, show me like what you guys have been using that for. Oh, we haven't gotten to that yet. Like,
yeah,
oh, but you did pay like $500,000 for us to do that,
yeah,
but you didn't want to use it. So I think that I think it's this happy medium between having a plan and like implementing that plan
yeah,
and just saying, oh, we'll do that after, because you can do it after, right?
yeah,
You can still collect user data and then use it for personalization later, which I think people collect that data and they just end up not even using it.
well, I mean,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I think that personalization is fine. I think using the data for your customer behavior, and then, you know, improving the site, you can make certain, you know, insights about what how certain segments behave, but
mhm.
that generally is just that's not something that needs to be dynamically done. That's just you're just improving your site.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I always think of it. It's like, you know, it's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where, you know, like personalization is up there with like perfect self actualization, and it's ideal, it's great, but at the base of that, you can't sell a product if it's not up on your site. You can't
Yes.
sell a product if the image is broken. It get
Yep.
that,
What if that
make it
canoe
fast.
doesn't fit on your screen?
Well, we'll turn the canoe shape like this, and then it'll be
Perfect.
a long. Yeah. I'm
It's
sorry.
not like,
I'm on camera again. I was going to move the canoe vertical, like up and down.
yes,
I
yes,
thought that might be compelling.
yes.
But so, is there anything? What are you watching?
Well, we are watching Presumed Innocent. Have you
Oh,
seen this with Jake
no, I
Gyllenhaal?
haven't. No.
Oh, it's so annoying. So it's on Apple. What is it? Apple Plus? What's that service called? Apple
Yeah,
TV
yeah.
Plus.
Apple TV.
Jake Gyllenhaal was a ADA, I think, and he was having an affair with one of the other ones, and she was murdered. It's so well written, but I think everybody has gotten so used to just being able to consume a whole season of something at once.
Huh?
No, they release it like weekly, like,
Oh,
like you were watching it on TV. It's so annoying, and my wife and I are just like, well, is it Wednesday yet? Can we watch the next episode? But in between that, we've been watching Hijack with Idris Elba on Apple TV Plus.
oh yeah.
Have you seen that? Oh, fantastic!
No, these are great. Yeah, I just
So,
finished Letterkenny and
seen a few episodes.
yeah.
What was
Uh,
this?
Shorzy. It's actually a
Oh, okay.
spinoff of Letterkenny.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're going full Canadian.
hey, you know, it's Vermont. You know, Quebec's right there.
Yeah, I know.
Love it.
I might go back and
Well,
watch
hell,
Trust.
you're yeah.
I do. Yeah, I know. If I'm in Buffalo, and if I'm too close to the water, then I'll switch over to Rogers Cellular.
Yeah, that's always. Do you get does that happen? Do you get like charged for that if like for
No, that really
international roaming?
happens. The plans now you don't get really, and I turned off
Yeah,
international roaming.
yeah, yeah.
So I, I haven't gotten charged for that in like 10 years,
Oh,
but
wow.
no, that really happened. I'll get a text, welcome to Canada. And I'll be sitting in Buffalo.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. You
Excellent.
look down, you see Bell or Rogers, and it's
Yeah.
like, what? I didn't even know it could do that. Um,
Yes.
so, okay. So kind of flipping back, how did you decide to go from, as I understand it, developing software for nuclear submarines to being a front end architect?
Yes, for 5 years. Well, I was working on software for about 6 months, and then I was a computer engineer in college, and then I got bored writing software, and I started doing support for the Navy, where I would go down to the boats every day and like figure out what their problems were that they were having, and then come back and work out a plan and then implement it and fix their problems basically, and make sure that the new boats that they were making were they any issues they were having, I would go help troubleshoot them and make sure that everything was working as it should and progress was happening. And then I started doing a whole bunch of research for the new ballistic submarines, and I just thought that was boring again. And in the meantime, I had been building websites just for friends and on the side, just because I thought it was interesting and I liked it. And then I got hooked up with one of our buddies, Andy, and through a family member, and the rest is history. I came over, and actually, I was writing Java at first, which you don't want
Mm-hmm.
me writing Java. That's a terrible idea. And then we had an opening we needed some front end help. I said, oh, I would absolutely love to do that. And the rest is history. I've been doing that ever since.
Nice. Josh Jensen, thank you for joining us for High Velocity's Commerce Chats. It was really great to get your viewpoint today. I really appreciate talking about Infinite Scroll and WYSIWYG editors with you.
Yes, thanks for having me. It was great catching up with you.